It's a Hollywood epidemic that should be easy to fix. Nonetheless, whitewashing has been a persistent habit of Hollywood filmmakers since the conception of cinema. In recent years, whitewashing has developed more nuanced tactics. Subtler means than blackface and racist caricatures have been adopted, letting white actors slip quietly into ethnically diverse roles. Surprisingly, whitewashing hasn't died out amidst the more progressive climate of the 21st century. Instead, elaborate excuses are made by filmmakers to justify its continuing presence in American cinema. Hollywood seems to stand by the fact that whiteness sells in the movie theaters. And historically, this was true. The star system of classical Hollywood enlisted white actors and actresses to sell tickets. The polished, familiar faces of stars like Joan Crawford and Rock Hudson practically ensured the box office success of a feature. In the early 20th century, audiences were drawn to movies that featured a beautiful and familiar face. The necessity that the face be white was an unspoken rule. It's only within the past several decades that this rule is being challenged on a large scale. Filmmakers like D.W. Griffith employed whitewashing to tell stories which included ethnic characters while keeping his stars and his narrative agenda completely white. White supremacy underscored many of Griffith's films. The white actors who perpetuated racist stereotypes in their performances helped to transport Griffith's narrow-minded ideology. Whether it's the blackface-donning actors in Birth of a Nation, or Richard Barthelmess's wimpy interpretation of a Chinese man in Broken Blossoms, Griffith used white actors to portray characters of color in his own vision. Griffith's vision was a myopic one, demeaning non-white personalities to a status of inferiority. Why then does Hollywood perpetuate Griffith's habit of whitewashing a century later? In his essay, The Voice of Whiteness, Daniel Bernardi recounts the beginnings of American cinema's racially exclusive tendencies. Quote, Griffith systematically integrated whiteness into the narrative system. Methodological correctness aside, his innovations in style and storytelling cannot, should not, be abstracted from his punitive racism. In practice, both articulations collude to advance what came to be known as the Hollywood style. End quote. Though the racism coloring Griffith's personal beliefs isn't shared by the majority of Hollywood filmmakers today, his utilization of whiteness as the standard or normal representation of the American populace continues. Daniel Bernardi discusses this common paradigm within U.S. filmmaking, highlighting the studies of Richard Dyer to support his claims. Quote, for Dyer, white domination colonizes the standard of normal, leaving blackness as something that is particular, a mark of otherness. He writes, in the realm of categories, black is always marked as a color, as the term colored egregiously acknowledges, and is always particularizing, whereas white is not anything really, not an identity, not a particularizing quality, because it is everything. White is no color because it is all colors. End quote. This view of whiteness allowed Caucasian actors to serve as character catch-alls, assuming that all audiences would gladly identify with the white characters they saw on screen. Today, moviegoers who don't fit the pearly white mold set by Hollywood are demanding representations they can actually relate to on a cultural and biological plane. These moviegoers seeking greater diversity also happen to be the majority in the United States. The version of America we often see on screen is failing to reflect the multicultural, racially diverse audience that's observing it. Mary Beltran, in her essay, The New Hollywood Racelessness, calls attention to the dated depictions of the American landscape as one that is overwhelmingly white. Quote, with respect to ethnic demographics, notions of a white majority no longer fit the country neatly. As tallied by the U.S. Census, almost 36% of Americans 18 and younger fell under the racial classification of non-white in 1999, while non-whites made up only 14% of the GI generation, born between 1901 and 1924. Thus, we could expect to see a broad multicultural perspective in many millennials, a cohort large enough to displace the baby boomers with respect to dictating popular culture. Undoubtedly, non-whites have reached an important critical mass through which their presence is beginning to be felt, even in the formerly white-dominated story worlds of Hollywood. End quote. Within the past 5 years, numerous online articles have been published on the prevalence of whitewashing in Hollywood, with sites like IndieWire, Huffington Post, and CNN calling attention to the racially regressive tactics of Hollywood filmmakers. Last year, the Annenberg School of Journalism at USC bolstered the fight against whitewashing with shocking statistics. The study, titled the Comprehensive Annenberg Report on Diversity, examined the 109 films released by major studios, including art house divisions, in 2014, and 305 scripted, first-run TV and digital series across 31 networks and streaming services that aired from September of 2014 to August of 2015. The portrait is one of pervasive underrepresentation, no matter the media platform, from CEOs to minor characters. Overall, the landscape of media content is still largely whitewashed, the study concludes. Stacy L. Smith, a USC professor and one of the study's authors, said in an interview, quote, "People are still being erased. It's 2016 and it's time for a change." End quote. What then are the solutions to a problem so persistent in Hollywood? The Annenberg study's final statement puts the complicated route to progress in concise yet hopeful terms. Quote, "Continued evaluation, increased advocacy, and greater transparency are necessary to transform an industry that has profited from invisibility into one that can celebrate inclusivity." End quote. The solutions proposed by the report are lined out in a bulleted list. The best part about the list is how achievable its tasks are. The most encouraging facet of the whitewashing issue is just how much negative attention it's received in recent years. The fact that whitewashing is still a problem in 2017, and an overwhelming problem at that, is disappointing, yes. But it's far from invisible. Journalists, students, celebrities, and moviegoers have expressed outrage at the inclusions crisis plaguing the film industry. Luckily, those voices are almost impossible to ignore, especially when they're speaking in unison.